friends, and welcome to another episode of Dark Side of the Word, a weekly podcast for all the dark story lovers. My name is Kate, and I am here with my, I really wish I didn't say this word, fantastic co-host CJ.
Are you going to feel like you're going to have to take that back at some point?
I already do.
Oh, okay. Hello, everybody who hopefully is nicer to me than my co-host.
CJ doesn't know the story. The story will come out soon.
Okay.
But it is the last episode of the month, which means it's the book club episode. So if you needed to have a precursor, so I might have promised to CJ, that is why. Sorry. If anyone heard a weird
catastrophe.
Noise. I blew over my microphone, sorry.
Because you were just so frustrated with me and our book club topic.
Anyway, I hope you have a warm drink, a comfy spot to sit, and you are hopefully have read. And if not, stop now. We will be having spoilers. And, serious spoilers, you have been warned. So stop now. Otherwise, continue on. And I hope you enjoy this review of the book.
My darling, dreadful thing.
Okay, first comment. I really hate the cover because look at the fingerprints.
I noticed that as I was getting ready that it had so many fingerprints. And I was like, oh, that was a bad call for, the texture of the book. I love the cover art, but the cover paper stock? What are we going to call that? Stock? Matte finish? Is it a matte finish?
I think so, yeah. Well, we're turning it.
Not good.
We're turning it from a matte finish to a shiny finish.
We are indeed. Not the way to go, everyone. Self-publishing and hybrid people, not the way to go.
I remember getting this book. And it was so pretty, and then I sat down, and there was a single solitary fingerprint on it, and I was like, "It's over now."
I am always putting Vaseline on my lips because they're always so dry, and I have a tub that I reach into to put it on, and so I have regular fingerprints, and then I have slightly shiny fingerprints from the Vaseline fingers, apparently, and that's probably gross, and I should wash my hands more often.
I have just as shiny, and I have no Vaseline.
Okay, then I am not so gross after all.
Anywho, friends, yes, we are, with that side tangent, we are talking about My Darling Dreadful Thing for this month's book club. And as always, I'm going to read you the synopsis that I wrote about the book before we get into all of it.
Is it an unbiased synopsis?
Yes, it is.
Okay, just checking.
You love my synopsis. You love them.
Just checking. I'm your fantastic co-host. Wanted to make sure it was unbiased.
Forcible strings under the floor for her mama's seances, Rue discovers that she's not alone. Another poor girl is there with her, a girl that only Rue can see, a ghost, an apparition. But Rue's mama discovers her new talent of connecting with the spirit and forces her above the floor to assist in deceiving their clients. After years have passed, an affluent woman comes to commune with her dead husband. Seemingly convinced, she requests that Rue become her companion, offering Mama an amount of money that she can't refuse. Rue is whisked away to a crumbling estate where an old woman is dying. Morbid furniture graces the unused rooms, and attraction to her guardian grows. Soon, Rue will do anything for her love, even trying to bring back the woman's dead husband. All doesn't go to plan, though. Soon, someone is dead, and Rue is left to prove that she's not insane or the murderer.
That was fantastic. You were so good at writing these. Again, that was better than the description on the back of the book, which I feel did not adequately reflect enough about the book, actually.
Yes, after reading the book. Okay, so this description did really suck me in. If anyone remembers when I announced the book, that we were reading this book, I said that I was so excited because the description really dragged me in. But in reading the book, the description does not match the book.
I feel like the description did not really drag me in. I thought it was a little lacking, and I feel like we could have put so much more into it to discover what may lay inside, like what you just did for your description.
You know, I should just offer my services. Yes, I can be hired. I will write your synopsis for your book.
Yes, you should totally do that.
All right. Well, as usual, we will start with our rating of the book. And as usual, CJ can go first.
Okay. So I gave My Darling Dreadful Thing 5 stars. I was going to give it 4 stars, but the scene at the end with Thomas just kind of kicked it over into 5 stars for me. Now, before you give your rating, Kate, I just want to say that I finished reading this book at 3 a.m. the other day. And I quickly updated my Goodreads and I saw your rating. And I actually blinked my eyes several times. I did like one of these because I could not comprehend what I saw. I was convinced it was some kind of glitch causing me to read it wrong. So, please tell us all what you rated this book.
Okay, so story time. It is now time to grace you with a story. So again, remember, I was really ecstatic for this book. And if you have been a witness to multiple of our book clubs, you know that CJ is normally the first one to finish a book. And I am always the one that is not shocked by the rating because I will have seen her rating beforehand. Well, this time, I finished the book well ahead of her. I was practically done with it by the time she started it, okay? I'm just going to say. But we ended up having a very small offline conversation about the book yesterday. And the comments that she was making, yeah, you told me. It was private, so I'm not sharing what the conversation is.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
okay.
We had a small offline conversation about the book yesterday. Our rule is not to really talk about it.
Yeah.
As we want all of our genuine reactions here. But based on the things she was telling me, I thought that she had given the book a bad rating. Like, so I was all on this. I was like, cool, yeah, it's gonna be a great podcast. We can just bitch about this book. Like, all right, cool. She also didn't like it. She totally understood. And then I was scrolling through Goodreads last night to check updates, and I felt like I was hit by a fucking truck.
Same, woman.
Yeah, but you didn't have context. I had context that said you also didn't like the book. I read my partner your text message, and he also thought you hated the book.
I did not say that I did not like the book. I said I was triggered by some scenes in a book.
Your comments, though, leads one to think...
There was a tone. Maybe so, I purposely misled you to have a more exciting podcast episode. You're welcome, listeners.
Well,
no, I didn't. I just didn't know what I was doing.
I can't give... I'm very glad I was warned, because the amount of emotional turmoil I had at her 5-star rating when I gave it 1 star, and thinking this whole time she was my companion, and now she's my enemy.
Your yoke mate, you mean?
I'm very glad that I was able to have, from last night to now,
to process
this very sad moment.
So let me finish my story here. I was awake at 3 a.m. or something like that, seeing your 1 star flit past my eyes, and I was just so upset. And I tried to go back to sleep, and I couldn't fall back asleep because I was just so perturbed about how you could possibly give this amazing story 1 star. I just couldn't fall asleep. And then when I finally did fall asleep, I dreamt about talking to you about this book during the episode. And I dreamt that I told my husband I was going to be talking to you about this book. And in my dream, every time I was like, bitch, be prepared to throw down on this one because I do not understand.
So... I thought I was going to have an ally. No. So I don't feel like I have the talking points very well fleshed out to fight this. And I feel like we're just going to have a repeat of the House of Last Resort.
I think you may be right.
Well, and if you have been a frequent listener, you will also realize that as time has passed, CJ has subconsciously changed her mind about the House of Last Resort. And now she's closer to my opinion.
I am not closer to your opinion. I still love it. I just meant that I can see where you thought the writing was lacking, but I still give that 5 stars because that was a good book.
Not where I thought the writing was lacking, but where you agreed with me the writing was lacking.
The writing was a little lacking, but I still love the book.
Your subconscious opinion still shifted.
I'm still saying, Christopher Golden, if you are listening to this podcast, I still give you 5 stars for the House of Last Resort.
But you started realizing its flaws, at least. We can agree to that.
I did see some flaws, yes.
So, let time tell.
However, I will say that as I typed up my notes for this episode, I got more and more excited about the possibilities of where this book can go and the theories. And I fell even more in love with My Darling Dreadful Thing. So full warning, I am going full English lit major here and analyzing the shit out of this because I cannot help myself. So yeah, that's going to happen a little bit. I will try to rein it in, but that's going to happen a little bit.
All right, let's just start with the first question that I have written down here.
All right, bring it.
It's not a horror book.
I knew you were going to mention that, and I would disagree that it is a horror book. It is just a different type of horror.
If you call this horror, biatch, then Prices can be horror.
It is not horror. Okay, so I am calling this horror. So I thought about this because I knew you were going to ask this question. So the things for me that qualify as horror: spooky images, like dead bodies. You okay there?
Yeah, my microphone just fell in.
Is it turning off because it thinks you have nothing good to say in defense to this? And it's just like, whatever, Kate, just be quiet.
No, I'm looking up the definition of horror on my phone.
Okay,
and
you look that
up. Accidentally hit it.
Okay, you look that up. So I think spooky things like decomposing bodies, zombie-ish things, unnatural, supernatural type beings, to me, that is horror. The reanimation of corpses, horror. Scary aspects, horror.
What scary aspects were in this? I mean, in the description, she talks about this house being haunted. This house was never haunted. It is all a ploy to be like, oh, look at me, I'm horror. But all it is she smells some fucking perfume that is easily explained away as someone like spritzing it through the house. Like, nothing about the house was scary.
That's a good point, actually. I forgot about smelling those little smells. That kind of led nowhere, didn't it?
And the footsteps.
And the footsteps.
Like,
I completely forgot about that. That's okay. Point. Okay. I can say when I invested, that is a good point. That those did not seem to lead anywhere.
Okay. Do I think that this book is dark and gruesome and has some supernatural elements to it? Yes. Do I categorize this that this should be shelved in horror? No, because I did not find anything disturbing, frightening, or scary about this book. And that is the definition that Google has provided.
Okay. That is a subjective definition or opinion because I found it spooky. I personally was not frightened, but I just think I am immune. I found some images. So when Thomas is making the statues go toward the house, I loved that. It reminded me of The Silent Companions, which is another historical fiction / horror book that I think is fantastic, but it's a more slow burn. I thought that was really cool for using it for effect. I thought the whole siege on the house was a little creepy. Thomas was creepy because he was just so angry.
No, I thought that the statues were a side plot to Nothing Town. Like, honestly, because she even mentions it in the description, she then finds them in the church, and we have this moment, it's like, oh, what's going to come out of this? And then it's just the only thing that comes out of it is Thomas decides to circle the house with them. There's nothing scary about it.
It's so creepy. Do you ever see Doctor Who's Weeping Angels episodes?
I've never seen Doctor Who.
God damn it. Okay. Maybe that's why I liked it so much too, because there are these alien creatures called Weeping Angels, and they look like statues in a graveyard, and it's a whole thing. But I liked it very much. I love that part of the novel, how they brought them in that way.
There are suspenseful moments in this book, but when
possession. Possession is a huge part of it. Horror, demon, ghost possession.
But it's not done in a scary way, and she completely allows it.
Yes, but still, possession of one's body by an otherworldly spirit.
Then the book is supernatural. Yours. It is not horror.
I think it's horror. I think it's...
No.
I mean, gothic horror. That's what it's described as. Queer gothic horror. Gothic is more subtle with its horror.
But there's still more possession or death or scariness, and there's nothing scary about this book. Even that very notion of how the possession happens and that they're best friends, and even what's her name's ghost? Yeah, here I am with this. No, the other lady,
Agnes. Oh. What the hell is his name?
Agnes.
Peter.
Agnes and Peter. Agnes, yeah, their connection. Like, that was like a brother-sister bond.
Yes. It was an untraditional possession story.
Supernatural, not horror.
I'm still going to go with horror. Gothic horror. I think this fits the bill for gothic horror. Not like Grady Hendrix horror, or Paul Tremblay horror, or Josh Malerman horror, or who else? I don't know. A lot. Stephen King horror, but definitely gothic horror. I think it fits. Like I said, it reminded me a lot of the Silent Companions. It reminded me of the Weeping Angel stuff.
All right, I'm going to ask my second question.
Okay.
No, because this goes in with the discussion of whether or not this is horror.
Okay.
It also adds to my next question, which I did want to touch on the author's note at the beginning, because I have questions about it, but I want to read a quick little sentence about the author's note.
Okay.
Gothic novels generally have at their heart at least one secret so gruesome it has been dropped down a well, locked away in the attic, or buried somewhere in the garden. Left alone in the dark, the secret festers until everything around it is infected with its rot and it has become impossible to ignore, forcing us to witness the most depraved sides of humanity. Okay, where in the book was that?
Do you think she's talking about Agnes killing her husband?
No.
No.
Because then you could call every thriller book a gothic horror. And she didn't even really kill her husband. It was an accident, really. She shoved him, and he happened to fall over the ledge and die. Now,
it's a fortunate accident.
If you were going to say that it is the brother-sister loving each other, you gotta do better. You gotta do better.
No, I don't think it's that.
Okay. Well, then tell me, what is festering alone in the attic until we have to look at the depraved sides of humanity? Because a man hating his wife, a man dying, and the man wanting to come back, like, really, it's the brother-sister relationship, and that was not even good enough.
It might be the brother-sister relationship.
Even worse. Like, the worst...
Or it could be, and this is the theme throughout the novel, which made me love it,
is that... the T-word.
What? What's the T-word?
Theme.
Is she haunted, or is she hallucinating? Got the two H's going on. Is the secret that she really is making all this up in her mind as a coping mechanism, or does she really have a way to speak with and raise the dead?
Can we come back to that question?
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to stick on really quickly the brother-sister relationship for a second.
Okay.
Since that was brought up. I will come back to that.
That's
100% want to talk. I want to stay with this for a second.
We will sidebar that conversation.
The brother-sister thing. Yes.
Ew. Judgy. Yes. Ew.
It's fine. I read Middlesex. It doesn't shock me anymore.
That's true.
Where in the story was this ever developed to the point for it to be a viable line of the plot?
What do you mean?
It's just thrown out there. You're just telling us that this is what's happening, but we're not given a backstory. We're not given a inciting incident of why these two. It's just like, oh yeah, I love my brother and had sex with him.
Well, it's because her father was such a domineering man, and he would go after her, and then she said that Thomas would protect her and that she looked up to him, and then I guess feelings overtook, unnatural feelings.
The common theme that I feel has played out in this book is that we're thrown all of these topics and discussions and thematic elements and inciting things to push the plot forward, but nothing was fully fleshed out and made into a real thing, to the point that this book felt like chopped salad and just everything was thrown in and tossed around.
I would completely disagree. I thought it flowed very beautifully, and I liked that at some points I didn't see what was coming, and I thought everything led nicely to the next point.
I think it had, okay, we got the abusive mother relationship. We've got her having her own, is she psychosis or not? We have her talking to the psychologists, which is a whole nother thing I'm going to talk about. We have queer romance. We have abusive husband. We have sex with siblings. We have, is this house haunted or not? We have the backstory of their father being completely obsessed with religious artifacts. We have the ability to reanimate bodies to begin with. That's not too much.
I mean, it's a lot. Definitely. I will give you that. It is definitely a lot to pack into one book, but I thought she did it well.
Also, I didn't mention the whole weird relationship of them with their ghosts, if we want to say the ghosts are real. Like, we'll get into that in a minute. Yeah. We also have that. This is, as I kept reading thing after thing after thing, I was like, none of this is developed. None of this is believable. Especially, here's my cancel statement. The queer romance was shit in this book. Absolute fucking shit. Not believable at all. I have problems with Agnes specifically and the development of their relationship, which actually ties back into the mother thing. So your point about, or you brought up how there's issues with Mama, or Mama, as I would call her in my head, because she said Mom wanted to sound fancy. So Mama. That's another thing. Sorry, even the whole, I could be your mom, I could not be. That's a whole nother thing.
That was a little weird. That was a little random. I will give you that. I'm just like, do we really need to have that there? Can't she just be an awful biological mother? They exist. They're definitely there.
Or not be her mom at all. Why couldn't we stick with that story?
Why do we have to flip-flop?
Or suddenly throw in that maybe that wasn't your dad.
Yeah.
We didn't need that.
That was unnecessary. I will give you that. That was unnecessary. But the relationship she has with her mother, it's a very domineering relationship. It's emotional abuse. It's keeping her down. And I feel like it sets the tone for the relationships that she has in the book and why she does everything that she does. So I feel like when she meets Agnes, she basically goes from one domineering relationship to another. Because Agnes, even though she treats Ruth better than Mama did, I still feel like this is now jumping all over the place. With Agnes, I felt like she was kind of, I don't want to say grooming because Ruth is 21 and she's of age, but with the buying her from her mother, the taking her shopping for new clothes, getting the haircut, it seemed very like a kept object, kind of like she is grooming her. And I was very uncomfortable with that dynamic. But again, Ruth was, beholden to her. She was controlled. She was in another relationship where she is being kept in a certain way. And I feel like the interactions with Mama are what set her up for that with Agnes. And also her relationship with Ruth is another one where Ruth, wants to keep her a certain way. She's another kept object with Ruth. And those three relationships, she just goes from one relationship to another where she's just always being down in some way.
I agree with the comments that Ruth is just an embodiment of her mom in a different form. I do not agree with the Agnes point at all because I feel that especially in historical novels, I believe this was in the 50s. I don't remember exactly. We'll say the 50s. That general area of time frame that women did pay for companions. And they would liberate, say, orphans or a low woman and be like, hey, I will tutor you. I will fashion you in a better standing so that you can have a better chance at life. And even buying her clothes and assisting with her is part of taking them as a companion. And as you say, okay, maybe Agnes is grooming her. I never saw Agnes as a strong enough person or character to ever have that ability with Ruth. And instead, she was a floundering person as well, moving through and dealing with the abuse of her ex-husband and his sister now. And so I never saw Ruth as that powerful, controlling character at all. If anything, I saw her as a weak, no backbone, completely loony character.
I didn't see her as actively trying to dominate her. It just kind of happened where she had the power. like she kept flirting with Roos a lot, and she must have seen how it made, Roos feel. And she just kept doing it and teasing her a lot. It seemed a little cruel to me, the way she kept leading her on for quite a while. And eventually things happened. I was really glad that they did. I was afraid she was going to keep leading her on through the whole thing. And I do feel like they found each other and they found love. But in the beginning, I was just very apprehensive about it because it just didn't sit right with me. She just felt she was another kept object.
I will throw this question out here. I don't think we can answer it. But for our listeners, just to have this question, because I just feel like you'll understand when I ask the question. But it really comes to the idea of that. Not that I needed a coming out story of their LGBTQ side of themselves, but the question mostly is, did they realize that they were attracted to women, or was this like two kept people coming to... Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like what are the chances that these two lesbians would able to find each other?
I mean, that part I didn't question. Like, Agnes could have been, so many people are, pansexual or bisexual, and they're just attracted to a person and not necessarily a gender or a sex. So that's what I assumed was happening there. And then you could also perhaps make the case that she was so abused by Thomas that she felt safer with a woman. So maybe that could explain why she had this attraction to Roos, who clearly also poses no threat to her whatsoever, because it was said so many times that Roos is so naive, she's so frail, she's so tiny, she's so light. There's nothing to threaten Agnes. So that's probably part of the appeal.
I just, from personal experience, and this is me with my background, someone with Agnes's abuse would not be able to be intimate with anyone at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, she does try and stop it, because she says, like, oh, we can't, Thomas, and she tries to halt it. And maybe that's what that was. But then love and passions overtook.
Now, you did say a point that I also want to touch on. I had to, mentally remind myself on a continuous basis that Ruth was 21 and not 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
She read like a child the entire book. Max 16 years old. Max. And I don't think... I guess you could see that, developmental slowness, not because of the abuse. She wasn't allowed to be...
Yeah, to socialize.
Socialize, have, nature experience, nature versus nurture, all that stuff. But with the thematic elements in the book and the way that the book was written, did not play for was not built for a character to be older but have the mentality of a younger person. This book was written as if she was a mature woman, and that was not played out correctly on the page.
Am I getting some Poor Things vibes here? Some leftover angst from Poor Things? No. With the older woman but having a mentality or an attitude.
Why am I blanking this book name? It sounds so familiar.
Not the movie you hated with Emma, what's her face?
Yes. Okay, but that makes a really good point. Poor Things was explained that she was a woman's body with the brain of a child, and it was explained that was the theme of the movie. That was the point of it all. But with this book, it's the theme was that she was an adult and she was 21 and she can make her own choices and do all this, but she wrote her down without explaining that, without making that a part of the book. She put her in thematic elements and situations and made it she was doing all this, she was doing all that, and made her into an adult woman, but did not write her to match what she wanted us to believe. Does that make sense?
Not entirely.
If she wanted her to be 21 but act like a 12-year-old, then she should have purposely written that style in the story. But instead, she was think of it, if someone has been writing YA their whole life and then they decide to write an adult novel, and the adult novel is written as a YA book, even though it's supposed to be adult.
I mean, I thought it worked that she is 21, but she's, socially stunted. She has emotional issues. She has trust issues. She's starved because she's underweight and malnourished. And, that's one of the reasons why I had the problem, too, I guess, with Agnes, is that she seems so frail and little girlish, and there's this mature woman who's been married who's kind of, being flirtatious with her and leading her on and doing all this stuff for her. I forget where I was going to go with
then
this.
I feel that should have been also something that was questioned in the story, or some note was made to her not being not sound mind, that's a wrong description, but not being of the same caliber of someone else who would be 21. And she had all these moments where she would act like she's 21 and be completely there with it, but then at other times the writing would slip into, oh, wait, what the hell? She's like acting like a 12-year-old now. And that's what I'm saying. It's just like, it was her character throughout the book was incongruous the whole time. It was constantly changing and flipping without a reason behind it, without explaining that this was done purposefully and this is part of the story and this is why, like, that's where I say that also this felt like a chopped salad, because, okay, we're talking about the theme of her maybe having developmental delays due to the abuse and due to her not being able to go to school and do all this stuff. So we kept having these themes thrown in the book without any of them paying off or having an explanation or reasoning or to have an understanding in the story. It was just theme after theme after theme after theme just thrown at us.
Well, I felt that, I didn't need, I guess, an explanation. Like, her naivete just came through in everything she did. And I think she was trying to do adult things and what was expected of her, what she would want to do for love. And it was just really hard for her. Like, take the whole situation with Wilhelmine, is that how we say her name? I wasn't quite sure. Wilhelmine, the sister-in-law, and telling her about how to, resurrect Thomas, basically, to bring him back as a ghost. This was something that really bothered me in the book, where Wilhelmine's just reading, she's telling Ruth, I read all about how to unearth a coffin, and you have to do this and you have to do that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how does she have this knowledge? Wilhelmine doesn't exactly go out and go to the town library. There's no internet in the 1950s. And I doubt the library in her house, where her father was a religious fanatic, has any books on resurrection or necromancy or occultism or anything like that. So where is she getting this knowledge? And she mentions the resurrection men. Who are the resurrection men? What are you reading and where are you reading it? And I feel like if Ruth had been a world-wise 20-year-old woman, she would have been like, where the fuck are you getting this from? You never leave the house. How do you know all this? Instead, like a child, she just takes it at face value and then goes and does her thing because she's trying to help Agnes. She just wants to help Agnes. She's doing whatever she can to just help the woman that she loves, and she doesn't question things. Just like a kid will do stuff because they want to, they see their mom wants a shirt in a store or something, and they may just take it because they just want to make their mom happy, not realizing that that's wrong to do, and they don't question it, So for me, it made sense, that dichotomy within her character, because it reflected her upbringing as a child, lonely, isolated, and abused, warring with her wanting to become a woman who is a partner and an intellectual equal of the person that she's attracted to.
Won't disagree with some of the points.
That is as good as I can hope to get with this one.
No, I guess it's not like I was looking for it to be spelled out. There was just so much other energy spent on examples like her hiding the food, her going and searching for food because she has this disconnect of being starving, and so she needs to have control of that food in her own hand. So we spent a lot of times on certain thematic elements such as the food, which to me is like should have been something inside passing, kind of shown, not told, like you just described her whole brain age part. But then something as deep and as intense as this discussion, we're not actually given solid ground on it, and we have to infer so much. And
I think that, like, things like the food, it lays the groundwork for the whole, is she haunted or is she hallucinating type thing? Because I feel like things like the food, harping on that, was just to reiterate and remind us that she is so emotionally damaged. She can't, even though she's full, even though she's fed, she can't stop these tendencies. She can't break out of this world that she's been living in for so long. And ultimately, that is what comes at stake later on when she has to choose Agnes, aka reality, versus Ruth, who is everything that keeps her trapped, everything from her childhood. And if you're looking at it from the she is hallucinating point, Ruth, it's a very similar name. It's her alter ego. And this is the alter ego that she's created to protect herself. So she's wanting to go into reality, but Ruth and her tendencies are all holding her back because that is what she knows, and she's been conditioned to just stick with that. It reminds me of like when Ruth has to say goodbye to Ruth in order to be with Agnes in the real world. It reminded me of that episode of Buffy in season 7, where Buffy's in the mental institution and they're trying to tell her that her life in Sunnydale with her friends is all the hallucination, it's the lie. And in order to live her real life with her mother and father, she has to kill all of her friends because the two can't coexist. She has to kill her coping mechanism for everything. And I felt like that's what a lot could have been happening with the Ruth thing, that she had to kill off that coping mechanism.
This could be the disconnect here, because I think that you went in with the idea of, is Ruth real or not? Whereas I went in and I was like, well, Ruth's real this whole time. I never once questioned the validity. Even though
I believe that Ruth is a ghost and that they have these ghost friends, definitely.
But I didn't even think once, like, you just explained this whole, like, Buffy thing and this whole, like, she has to give up this. None of that crossed my mind once reading this book. Even add to, like,
It's all because of the turn of the screw reference in the case study, because that's about the woman who is haunted by ghosts and she ultimately kills somebody. And are there really ghosts that made her do this, or is she just mad and hallucinating and she did this in a fit of madness? And like that was a really good example of foreshadowing, I guess, that you're always talking about, how to lay the groundwork for stuff that happens. I see a face there.
No, that was me saying, well, I guess this would have been important to read Turning the Screw. I never read it. So that didn't help. It was just like, here's another quote.
They mentioned it. They mentioned the theme of the story, but that kind of made me start thinking about the reality, the haunting versus hallucination. And the more I read and the more I did these notes, I really started to cotton onto the idea that it is very possible that it could be either one. And you're left wondering which it is at the end, which is you are at the end of the Turn of the Screw. You're left wondering, is it really a haunting or is it madness? Because there's a really good case for both sides. And usually I hate that in stories. I want a freaking haunting, an authentic ghost. And for some reason, I loved it. I loved the wondering, and I loved how well the hints were placed. The case study things were dropped. I loved how she wove so many possibilities together in Ruth, in the situations with the case studies and with the doctor, and having to give up Ruth. It all really worked for me.
Well, and the ending doesn't actually give you an answer either, because she could just be imagining Agnes as well if it wasn't a real thing. It's also interesting in the book how with the caretakers too, it's like her mom was the extreme, Agnes was a little less, and then the last guy was like even less.
That's true. And that just goes along with the, domineering kind of relationship. She's being a kept thing throughout the book. But yeah, progressively less so. I didn't notice that, but that is true.
Okay, so changing course here, since I promised you we'd come back to it. Let's talk about the very idea of the interview portions with the psychiatrist and whether or not Ruth is real or not.
Okay.
So, would you like to start that? I've been saying all my points first.
So at first I didn't like the case studies because they broke up the rhythm for me. Like the writing style of this story is very old-fashioned. Even though we were in the 1950s, I kept forgetting that. I kept thinking we were in Victorian times, or like the 1880s or something, because it just seems so old-fashioned. And I love that because it lends to like the eerie atmosphere, the loneliness feeling that happens in the house. So I didn't like being brought back into the reality. And then after a while, I just started to like them because when they mentioned the Turn of the Screw reference, I'm like, oh, these are serving a really interesting purpose. And they also were really good at, I like how they exposed the layers of the story. So one of the things that I loved about this book is the slow reveal. Like everything was just revealed slowly, almost teasingly. Like we know early on from the case studies that Agnes is dead. And then we learn that she was bitten. And then we learned that she was mutilated. And then another body was found dead. And then we realized it was murdered. And then it was left to rot outside on the lawn. Like, and you're reading this and you're seeing all this stuff revealed, but you're reading the story of how Ruth is finding this happy home and a love and this security. And you're like, how do we get from A to B and everything gets so batshit crazy? And the case studies I thought were really good at bringing those little portions in there.
I do not agree.
No?
Well, okay, so one of the things that I really struggled with is, because I like realisticness in my books, and it goes, so she is doing the interviews, which was also weird because it would be like she's telling him a story, and he's also interviewing her at the same time. And the two problems I had is, one, her telling of the story read too much like a book and not a storytelling. Like, it's just like, oh, we're supposed to believe that magically all these details and all this information is going to be told. And two, it just felt that the conversation between them wasn't in any natural way, because I feel that there should have been moments in the book where there were interruptions to her story more. And there was, instead of these, like, dedicated, like, oh, we're going to up and start each day or, each section of the story plot to, like, put those little foreshadowing clues there, like you said, about, like, oh, now this body had this and this had in the case file, and instead of it making, like, a really natural flow of, like, her telling a story.
And so for me, it just whetted my appetite.
I didn't like it. Would have been fine if, I think it would have worked better if, like, the interviews were separate and kind of done as the whetting the appetite and had no connection to, like, well, let me tell you the story, and then it's like, oh, this chunk of the story is her telling the story. Like,
I see
if
what
it
you
had
mean.
just been like interview and then the book, and then the book, I would have had a better transition and been better with it than it being like these sections of the book are her telling the story.
Yeah, it was an unconventional format. I agree with that, because at first it threw me too, but then after a while, I think I just got so wrapped up in the story that it stopped bothering me.
So, do you think Ruth is real? So, you think Ruth is a ghost? I think I heard you say.
I do think Ruth is a ghost. Yes,
so she's real.
I do think she is real, though I do still think there's a very strong argument that it could be a hallucination, and that is her alter ego to protect herself.
Well, I'm going to give one inconsistency to the story here. I have not, remember, I did not think that Ruth wasn't real the whole time. This is just something that I came up with as you said this.
Theory.
I think I was questioning this theory as I was reading it too, but I was just like, she's a ghost, who cares? This is just a mistake of the writer. But now, it's a theory. So my theory is, in the description of how Peter is made, and in the description of how Thomas is made, they are brought back to life when essentially blood is poured on their essentially body, but where their body is, correct? Okay. So they mention multiple times that Ruth was in a bog.
Yes.
Okay. How then did she end up in the floorboards of a house?
It's a very good point, actually.
Because she appeared in the floorboards of the house once Rue had, bled from the strings or whatever, or biting her finger on the floor. But that's not a bog.
That's not a bog. Yeah.
And I wouldn't think it's a house in a bog, because this is a flourishing town. So it'd be very weird if she was, like, buried under there when they have this huge town.
It could be. I mean, it takes place. They go ahead.
I was like, but that's an inconsistency with the rest of the story, though.
So on the she's a ghost side, it could be that it takes place in the Netherlands, and they talk all the time about how there's bogs and, like, people can disappear in them. So they could have very well, and how Ruth is supposed to be from, like, pre-pagan days or something like that. So it is very possible, I guess, that she was buried in a bog, and that over time civilization grew up over around her, much how it does in other cities like Rome and even America, and she was in there until Bruce somehow freed her with, like, the blood or the tears or whatever it is. But on the it's a hallucination side, very convenient to have her show up under the floorboards when it had to be that Peter was roused by what's-her-face crying on his grave, and Thomas was roused by what's-her-face bleeding on him.
When she dumped him in the bog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One positive about this book that I really appreciated is her rendition of bringing ghosts back to life. Like, why ghosts exist, why this world doesn't have a ton of ghosts, and how they're brought back and attached to certain people. I actually really appreciated that, and I thought that was a super unique, interesting way to work ghosts into our world. So I'm going to give that kudos, okay? It's probably why I got 1 star instead of 0. Okay, this is getting very long, and I want our listeners to enjoy it. So I have 2 things that we should touch on, then we should probably wrap up.
I want to talk about what I loved about the book, though.
Oh.
I have so much I want to talk about that I loved.
Okay.
We've touched on like half of it.
Okay. Well,
we talk about happy things for a little while?
Okay.
And then you can tell me I'm wrong?
Well, I mean, you don't know.
Okay. You're like, oh, well, I'm not going to pass up an opportunity to tell you that you're wrong. Okay. So the first thing I loved about this is the title, My Darling Dreadful Thing, because I love that it just evokes such an image. It's one of the best titles I feel like I've ever seen, and it's one of the best phrases ever because the antithesis, putting darling and dreadful together just makes it stand out. And it just describes what Ruth is, what Peter is, how Ruth feels about herself, how Agnes feels about Thomas. It's just the perfect title for a book with all these flawed characters that seem to still be loved and lovable. So I love that. Any thoughts to tell me? Okay.
I mean, the title drew me in. I wanted to read this book.
I loved the writing in general in this book. For someone who English is not their first language, I think she has a wonderful mastery of language. She uses beautiful phrases. She has beautiful words that are chosen. Amazing imagery. Everything felt very evocative and visceral. Especially like when Ruth describes how it feels to be possessed by Ruth. I love how Ruth hooks onto her spine and anchors herself to marrow and stretches to fill her, and how Ruth burns her throat as she crawls down it. And I especially loved how whenever Ruth was possessing Ruth would say things like, Ruth came to my feet instead of I came to my feet, to show that Ruth was the one moving her, and how she threw my arms around someone's neck. Like it's just brilliant. It's just putting you in the moment with the possession.
You're making an assumption.
What?
That she wrote in English.
I believe she did.
I mean, we have our books translated all the time for other countries. Who says that she didn't write this in Dutch and she had it translated?
She might be, but she said something in the acknowledgments about how she thinks her English is pretty good, but somebody was helpful with fine-tuning things. Yeah, I like to think my English is pretty good, but it's clear there's always room for improvement for the copy editor.
Okay.
So I do think it was, at least, I mean, maybe she wrote the original version, but I think she would have, in Dutch, but I think she would have translated it herself, since she does seem to speak English.
It's interesting she's a triplet.
Is she a triplet? Really? I didn't see that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Johanna grew up in the Netherlands together with her 2 sisters. The 3 of them are triplets.
Huh. There you go. Okay. What else did I love? We talked about that. The writing world, the writing horror rules thing we talked about a little bit. And I have to say, even though I appreciate what she did, I didn't particularly like the rule that if you have a whole body, you can still come back as a ghost. It just was a little bit of a stretch for me. But I feel that she played it well in the book. She kind of shoved it down her throat. She gave her evidence about why it works and why it's happening. And she made, the denouement built on that whole thing. So I think she made it work, even though I didn't particularly love it myself. I do think it is very unique and original, and I give her credit for that, because I also haven't heard that anywhere. So that was pretty cool.
Where'd you find the English comment?
I think it's the acknowledgments.
Oh.
I always read acknowledgments because I look for agents.
That's why I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's in the acknowledgments.
Okay, cool. So I was like, where'd you see that?
The madness thing I loved, as we talked about. I loved Ruth. I just really connected with her.
Ruth or Ruse?
Ruth. The girl, not the ghost.
Yeah.
I thought parts of her story were really hard to read, anything dealing with her mom. The scene where Ruth freaks out and she thinks Agnes is upset with her and she's going to send her back to Mama, where she'll be forced to be shoved under the floorboards and then starved and be in darkness. I actually cried at that because I was just so moved. And Agnes's reply to her saying that she's like a kicked puppy, that just really stuck with me. And I felt very bad for Ruth the whole time. She was heartbreaking at many points, but I also loved how she could be really funny. Like, I thought it was hilarious that Ruth politely introduces herself to Thomas when she digs up his corpse. Like, it's like a little formal meeting. And the whole scene where she's just trying to, like, get Thomas out of the ground and put him in the wheelbarrow and tries to sink him in the bog, that was just funny, because instead of being appalled at what she's doing, things are falling off left and right, and she's just upset about it and apologizing to the corpse, like, I'm so sorry your ear fell off. So I think it was a nice bridge of sadness and, you know, her personality. It's there. It's definitely there, and I like seeing that. And I liked Ruth too. I was so fucking proud of Ruth when we hear what happened to Mr. Mesman, that she went and ripped out his throat. Like, that was fan-fucking-tastic. Bravo. And yeah, I like that a lot. And I think I still think a lot of Ruth is just Ruth's inner psyche. Still harboring around that.
Okay, well, what do you think of how Agnes died? What are your thoughts about that?
That Thomas came to her and said, basically, I'll torture and kill Ruth and everybody, and, you know, and she's like, unless you kill yourself first, and so she killed herself to spare them further harm.
You think she committed suicide?
Agnes? Yes, yeah. I do.
But it's its own... How do they have joint hallucinations if it's in their head? Because
yeah, that part I don't know.
Because they both saw Ruth, they both saw Peter, and they both saw Thomas.
It could be that both are just so traumatized and they happen to find each other. They're both taking, you know, they both have been on... Yeah, a co-psychosis. They even mentioned the douli à trois or something like that. À trois, I forget what it is. But it's a folie à trois, that's it, where three people can leave the same thing.
Did they make a comment whether or not they found the statues and everything?
In the end, the guy saw them, actually. That hunter who wandered across the property, he saw the statues, I think.
So that stuff did happen then.
Yeah.
As far as we know. Like the broken window, probably. Okay. I don't have an opinion on how she died. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised, because she seemed a little weak in general. And after being with a dude like Thomas, I can understand why. She just might want to get it the fuck over with. You know? And I like that she says she did it for love. I feel like overall, this is a love story. And for me, love stories make the best kind of horror stories, because there's nothing more terrifying than love.
No,
and all its
I'm writing
forms.
one now.
Yeah.
I'm writing one now.
So I liked that.
I have
one unanswered question.
Okay.
Why did we not just send Peter and Ruth to dredge up Thomas's body and then, like, burn it?
Because they can't be around death?
But still, like, I feel like they could have been sent to try something. I know they said, like, the ghosts aren't strong enough to move the saint statues, so maybe they weren't strong enough to unbury the body, but I feel like it should have been worth a try.
Thomas moved the statues all by him lonesome. And
Apparently he's all super powerful, even though, you know, Ruth has been a ghost for like 2,000 years. So why couldn't she haul Thomas up out of the bog?
But you're also assuming that burning the body would sever the ghost once it's already appeared. We know about them appearing, but does that have any connection once they're there?
No, but I think my point is just, why didn't we try to use the ghost to our advantage to stop Thomas? You know, like, they can't get killed. She went to go talk to him, and then she's like, I don't know, he seems pretty pissed and he's not going away. Like, that's all you can do? You're not going to go try and, like, find his ear in the bog and take it out and burn it? I don't know. It just seemed like that was a loss. I would have explored that opportunity if I were the author. At least acknowledged it.
Okay, and then I have a last question. What do you think of the author's note at the beginning? Did it ruin your starting... Well, clearly not you. You gave it 5 stars. But did it already taint your idea of the story? Did it excite you? Did it ruin it for you?
I like that I was told what I could expect a little bit. But, you know, I'm reading horror and dark books, so I'm expecting all that kind of stuff. So it didn't really...
But it just... I feel like this is more of an author's note at the end of, like, okay, you're telling me that the essence of the story is a secret. It's like, I don't want to be told that. That's giving away the story. Like, you can't prep your readers like that.
I'm going to let you on a secret. I completely forgot about the secret and that whole author's note in the beginning as I read. So I did not remember it was there until you mentioned it. So no, it made no lasting impact upon me.
I just know, I feel like she cheated a little, because I know that, especially with the book I'm writing now, there's an essence to the story that I hope readers take away from it, and that's my job to put it through the passage. I don't get to cheat and put that at the beginning of the book.
Maybe she's just trying to be sensitive for sensitive readers.
It wasn't a sensitive reader thing, because she's just being like, well, don't come at me if I didn't LGBTQ this right. It's like, you gotta just take your chance, bitch, and hope you did it. Like, no, you can't.
I feel like every book has a caveat warning nowadays. Like, I'm doing this to entertain. I'm not trying to offend. I am a good person. Please don't cancel me before my book even makes it to shelves.
I am completely against very in-your-face trigger warnings. Like, I don't mind them happening for people that need them, but I like them hidden. Put them at the back of the book. Put them on your website. Put them in a place that's not like the first page I'm opening to your book.
I can agree with that. Put them in the back of the book.
Until I read Butcher and Blackbird, I needed those trigger warnings. I needed to
they can be helpful.
A strong foundation to be able to survive that book. And now I can't eat ice cream. I'll explain offline. Anyway, friends, let us... This is so long. We're going to just hurry up to the end here. Are you changing your rating?
No. Are you changing your rating?
No. So, we're about to go over an hour. So I'm going to quickly announce next month's book.
Okay.
Just because so we can wrap this up. This better fucking be horror. Okay? It is called How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive. Okay? By Craig DeLuis. It was really funny when I went to get this. Well, actually, when I went to go get the challenge book that we're doing at Barnes & Noble, I was in line, and the girl behind me, and she was a teenager, was buying this book.
Oh, wow.
And then that reminded me I needed to get this book, so I got out of line. Yeah. And I was like, please don't say you grabbed the only copy in store. But surprisingly, Barnes & Noble had like 4 of them. I didn't realize, like, it's also like got like a Barnes & Noble like virtual book club thing or virtual book signing thing. So I think we picked a well, like, I didn't think this was going to get attention. Anyway, let me read the back real quick. Max Murray should be on top of the world. He's a famous horror director. Actors love him. Hollywood needs him. He's making money hand over fist. But it's the 80s, and he's directing cheap slashers for audiences who crave only more blood, not real art. Ooh, I love this is in the 80s. Not real horror. And Max's slimy producer refuses to fund any of his new ideas. Sally Priest dreams of being the final girl. She knows she's got what it takes to score the lead role, even if she's been cast in only small parts so far. When Sally meets Max at his latest rap party, she sets out to impress him and prove her screen queen prowess. But when Max discovers an old camera that filmed a very real Hollywood horror, he knows that he has to use this camera for his next movie. The only problems are that it came with a cryptic warning and sometimes it howls.
Oh, goodness.
By the time Max discovers the true evil lying within, he's already dead set on filming the scariest movie ever put to film, and like it or not, it's Sally's time to shine as the final girl.
That is a long description, and I look forward to your recap next month.
Okay, I'm really excited. Also, did anyone ever watch Scream Queens? Because when you made a mention of Scream Queens, you need to watch it.
Is it going to make me puke because it's slashery? No. Okay.
It's primetime TV slashery.
Okay, I can handle that.
Like, yeah, there's some blood, but it's not like anything that you're gonna be like, oh my god.
Okay. Because Supernatural has hardened me.
Yeah, I would say it's less than Supernatural.
Okay, I can handle it.
Feels more.
I can watch the hand cutting scenes in Supernatural now. I'm so proud. I've grown up so much.
Only took you 15 seasons.
Right. 14. Thank you very much.
Alrighty, friends. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, a podcast for all the dark story lovers. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. Otherwise, we're an audio-only podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iTunes. And make sure to leave a comment to help us keep the lights on. And also, we have personalized polls and questions for each episode on Spotify if you want to check that out as well. But thank you so much, friends. I hope that you enjoyed this very interesting book club
lively
episode.
Debate.
All right, friends. Bye.
Bye.